Oh, we've made it. It's our final weekend without the Duke basketball season being in play. Come Monday, it starts a new week, and it starts the 2024-2025 Duke basketball season. Let's have some fun here on a Friday. It's Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome on into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So great to have you here with us on Friday, November 1st. A new month is here, and that means we're set for a basketball season to begin. We'll also be talking on today's show about Duke's football game against Miami. Our friend Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated is back with us once again to discuss everything going on in the world of Duke athletics. That's what Locked On Blue Devils does for you. Please make sure that you subscribe to us wherever it is that you get your podcast. We're available each and every day for free. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Also, watch the show each and every day on YouTube. Like this video, share it with your friends, and most importantly, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to grow our subscribers within the Locked On Blue Devils YouTube community. We're on X at LO_Blue Devils, and also I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. Let's bring them on in. It is Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated. It's a busy time of year as the basketball season gets set to begin. November has finally arrived. Conor, I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I feel like I need to slap myself in the face here a little bit to wake myself further up when you talk about the crossover season, I guess as it's come to be called. But man, it's popping now.
So excited to let us get started today talking about a Duke basketball season that will begin come Monday. Duke setting to take on Maine. I'm really excited about this matchup, about this game for Duke being kind of the setting tone for what's to come. Obviously, everybody's eyeballs are going to be on that third game of the season when they take on Kentucky. I, for one, love kind of getting a little bit of a ramp up to get there. Although after we've watched these exhibition games from Duke, I don't know how much more of a ramp up that they need. I think the one big thing that matters that they've got to be excited about is like, okay, this is for real. This is when it all starts.
Yeah, I think I've asked John in the last year or two whether he likes having a non-conference game or two before the Champions Classic, or whether he wants the Champions Classic to be the bat leadoff on the schedule, basically, and being that unveiling. It seems like he prefers it to be not the first game. You want to get a couple games under your belt, especially with how young Duke always seems to be now. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the Kentucky game. I'm going down to Atlanta, but yeah, the show debuts. It's not like it's a soft opening. I think the soft opening was the last couple weekends where we got scrimmage or exhibition looks at this team. So, and I'm with you. I don't know what they could have done different that would have been more impressive than what they did in annihilating favorite son Bobby Hurley. I mean, that was just it's kind of surreal to sit there and take it in. It's like, oh my God, some point late in the second half, we look over and I'm looking at Brendan Marks and Rod Baxley and like, they're actually going to beat this team by more than they beat D2. So that was kind of wild.
It feels good that, that we were able to see that display from Duke, and it kind of, I think it heightens the expectations. Not that they needed to be heightened by any stretch of the imagination, thanks to the work that Mike Krzyzewski did for 4+ decades and what John Shire has done through his first 2 years. Duke is a school that feels like they can go out and win a national championship each and every year. That's the case once again this season. But to your point, when you are playing a team in Arizona State, who's now a member of the Big 12, and you beat them by 56, the takes, the expectations, they're soaring right now. And it's fun. It's kind of fun to think about what could be going into the new season.
Yeah, I think we've basically got a pretty good handle of what the best version of Duke can be. Like when everything is clicking, when they're as healthy as they are right now. I mean, Pat Ngongba would help certainly, but it's not like Duke went into the season thinking they needed 20 minutes a game out of him. You're looking at this roster and what they can do, what their strengths on the court are. I don't know where their weakness is. I'm sure we're going to find out. I mean, 5 months of a college basketball season, you don't go through 5 months without something being exposed, right? Even the Kentucky team that was 38-1 when Duke won it in 2015. I mean, that team had flaws. They were just able to overcome them because they were good in other places. But I look at this Duke team, and I can't put a finger on it right now. They've got rim protection. They can run people off the three-point line. I mean, they didn't make their threes, and they were up 16 at halftime. They were 2 for 11 against Arizona State, and we know they're going to get out in transition. In the open floor, they are scary. They feel comfortable. If you look at the starting lineup they had out there with Proctor, Foster, Knipple, Flagg, and Malawach, the only one you don't feel good about getting a defensive rebound and sprinting up the court with the ball and creating for himself or creating for somebody else is the 7'2", 250-pound guy.
Yeah.
That's scary. And then you bring in off the bench, Sion James and Mason Gillis can both do that also. Darren Harris can do that also. And to pound the drum a little bit, Darren Harris looks so much better than the recruiting services gave him credit for almost his entire high school career. I know he got a late bump, but he was in the 70s and 80s there for a while, and he's just such a complete basketball player. I at least for the first month to month and a half of the season, he's going to get significant minutes. Like, he's going to get a look to be a contributor on this team. And you're talking about you're already going into, and then throw Malik Brown in off the bench. You're talking about a rotation that's 9 deep, and that's really something that Duke has missed. And that throws in the 10th man, who I'm sure they also want to get in there when they can, is Isaiah Evans, who is a McDonald's All-American.
And ranked higher than Knipple and Harris, which just makes this whole dynamic interesting. One, when you evaluate recruits, but the depth of Duke, I mean, all of it kind of makes that conversation so interesting, because this is a deep Duke basketball team, and there are a lot of guys who need minutes and earn,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a deep roster. It's very talented. You can hand wring, and you can kind of play the fear factor card of, well, what happens if they don't play this guy minutes? Is he going to leave? Yeah, you can be concerned about that during the season, or you can just enjoy it. And whatever shakes out in, I think the transfer portal now opens in mid-March, somewhere around there. It's different than opening the Monday after Selection Sunday, but only by a couple weeks. You can worry about that then. I mean, just worry about the season for right now. Duke is always going to have talented players, whether they get them through the portal or whether they bring them in as recruits, and then they develop.
I'm that Duke basketball sicko, Connor, where I've already jumped there, right? Where you do start to worry about whether or not this is going to impact future decisions. But I got to take your own advice there. Like, let's enjoy it. This year is going to be so much fun, and let those conversations be conversations that come at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, Duke in the last 2 years won an ACC championship and went to the Elite Eight. Were those not fun seasons? And
hell yeah.
Is it not a lot more fun to just talk about the way the team is playing instead of worrying about, well, TJ Power isn't getting minutes. Is he going to transfer? Sean Stewart is
out the door.
His rebounds per 40 minutes is like 18, but he's not getting minutes. So is he going to transfer? It takes away from it. I understand that that's the climate we're in. And I understand that, like, you do want to be able to plan for next year. I already have the roster construction thread started on my board. I started it when the Boozer twins committed. Yep. But, at this point, to sound like a cliched coach, at some point you just got to live in the moment and worry about planning for next year when it's time to worry about that stuff.
Well, next year, the Brotherhood could be expanding with a college decision set to take place over the course of the weekend. Folks are familiar with kind of scholarship outlines that myself and a couple of other Locked On shows will put out there for their schools. Maybe we'll add someone else coming up this weekend, and a couple of more thoughts with the Duke season set to begin. We'll continue that part of the conversation after we take our first time out here on today's show. Yes, Locked On Blue Devils is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Forward we go. Conor O'Neill is here from Devils Illustrated. We're talking about Duke basketball. They tip off the season on Monday when they take on Maine from inside Cameron Indoor Stadium. What are some of the things that you're going to be watching out for that one, Conor? Because I think we continue our conversation that we were just having. For me, it's what does that rotation look like? What does the minutes distribution look like? It was one thing to see it in those exhibition games. Now does that continue into the real season?
Yeah, I think, well, you start with the starters that are going to be out there, and I think that's the lineup that was out there last Sunday with the two returning guards, and then the three freshmen that all have a chance to be top 10 picks, honestly, with what we've seen from them so far. They're just that good. And then I'm kind of curious if John, I think during Arizona State, it always depends on the game flow and where that first stoppage comes when you're ready to sub guys. But I'm curious if we see more line change type subs with the three transfers coming in off the bench right away. Like that was really fun to see. Like, I can't remember the two that he kept on. Maybe it was one of the guards in Cooper Flagg, and then Malik Brown for Malawach. The two others at the kind of interchangeable wing guard positions. I'm always a fan of big substitutions.
Yeah, and just seeing how they can all work together, that sort of. And if Duke is in a spot to ever think about going 5 for 5, like a full platoon, putting it in and out for sure.
I'd be thrilled with that. And then you'll want to see how early in the game Darren Harris and Isaiah Evans check in. We didn't see Isaiah until the second half against Lincoln, I know. And I think against Arizona State also. Saw Darren Harris earlier. He's a little bit more of a complete player with what he can do defensively, and they both shoot really well. Isaiah is a lot more of a microwavable scorer. He can get hot and put 10 points on anybody in 2 or 3 minutes. So it's fun to kind of take stock of the different weaponry that comes off the bench, right? Like Sion James ran some point guard against Arizona State. So if you don't feel good about Caleb Foster and or Tyrese Proctor, you've got that as an option. Isaiah is a microwavable scorer, like I just said. Malik Brown is going to come in for Common. I don't think they're going to play too much together, but can. And so it's just really the thing that I want to watch most in these first 2 games is lineups and rotational stuff and figuring out whose role is what.
Yeah, that's the big thing for this Duke basketball team is defining those roles, because so many people are going to be talking about a team with these high of expectations, Duke being a brand that everyone wants to have their own takes and thoughts on, and what this team is looking like. Everybody in America is going to be talking about Cooper Flagg, but he's in a spot to not be the leading scorer for this Duke basketball team. Definitely going to make an impact in so many different ways. So I think talking to Flagg specifically, now we get to see what does this look like. Cooper Flagg, the college basketball player, how much of everything does he do? How much of a scorer is he? What does he look like immediately on the defensive end of the floor? We know he's going to be a great basketball player, but what specifically does that look like within Duke's team this season?
Yeah, I think you'll be able to draw a line in the sand between people that expect him to be the number 1 pick and expect him to put up number 1 pick type of offensive numbers, and people that are kind of familiar with his game, to steal the Shaq meme about Christian Wood. Like, people that are familiar with Cooper's game are going to go into the season knowing that he's not exactly a guy who's wired to get you 30 a night. Like he can. I'm not saying he's I'm not putting a ceiling on him scoring 25 points as a career high, but I honestly think it's more likely he has a triple double than he has a 30-point game this year, because he's that much of an all-around player. And I mean, the little subset with playing Maine, of course, is I haven't done the necessary research yet on how many of these Maine guys are actually from Maine, who might know Cooper, who Cooper might know them. I'm sure they've heard of him, but that's a
How could you
little
not? Yeah,
fun
absolutely.
connection here. You're going to see blocks. I think I've said it on here earlier in previous episodes. Like, I think a typical Cooper Flagg game is going to be something like 13 points on 5 of 8 shooting, a couple threes. He's probably going to get to the line more than that. I might be shortchanging him and being able to draw fouls. But then you're going to get like 8 rebounds and 6 assists and a couple blocks, a couple steals. He's going to do everything well. He's not going to do anything offensively that is spectacular in the way that a Zion Williamson was. That's why I kind of hope people divert from the Zion comparisons. The media frenzy around it might be comparable, but the games are just different. Cooper is not the guy who's going to go out and score and score and score. And it's really a roster that's set up for him to not do that. Like, put Con Knipple out there and he might be the best freshman shooter in the country so that he's available on kickouts. Put 2 guards that can attack off the dribble and penetrate and get into the lane and throw lobs for either Cooper or Kaman Malawach. I mean, it's really not a roster that's built around, hey, we need you to score at least 20 points a night for us to have a chance to win games. I don't know if I ever see John building a roster that says that about any player, no matter how talented they are. So we're going to see some different stuff in terms of projected number 1 pick, all the stuff that comes with the expectations. You're not going to be able to expect things from him scoring wise.
And taking on his home state, taking on Maine to begin the college basketball season. By my count, looking at it, all of 1 basketball player on their roster native to the state of Maine. But earlier this week, we saw Cooper's twin brother, Ace, commit to Maine. And so then there's been part of the Duke community on the boards asking, well, what is he going to wear to the game if he shows up now playing at Greensboro Day for his senior season? What do you wear as Cooper's twin brother taking on what's going to be your future school? Fair question to ask.
It is. I don't know if we're
going to have an Ace flag watch for this game.
I know. Just because he announced the other day doesn't mean he wasn't committed before then. So maybe he did have enough time to go out and create one of the jerseys that TVs love, like my heart is in 2 places and both places are playing each other. But yeah, it is interesting. And it's a little more of a wrinkle to this. Not that it needed one, but
here we are. Yeah, here we are. Also, Shelton Henderson set to announce this weekend one of Duke's top remaining targets in the class of 2025. He's got 3 schools in the mix: Duke, Louisville, and Texas. Famously a different Final 3 than the Boozers, than Nicholas Kamini. I mean, it's been different ranging for those Final 3s, but it seems as though, Connor, over the last few weeks, Duke feels pretty good about Shelton Henderson out of the state of Texas.
I think so. Without confirming anything or giving anything away. I mean, I logged a future cast for him, I think about a week ago on Rivals. Duke was late to this party. Like, they didn't offer until June, but they made up a lot of ground. Jay Lucas went and saw him in Bel Air, Texas. I think that was in September, if I'm remembering the time frame correctly. 6'5" guard who's thick upper body. He was at Countdown. They've done a lot of legwork on him in the last few months, and I think it pays off with an announcement tomorrow.
Without a doubt. And you've got the playing for the JL3, the John Lucas team there, and the Lucas family connection within it. I mean, there's a lot of signs that could point in Duke's direction. So we will be looking at that for Shelton Henderson and what he's set to do over the weekend. Also over the weekend, Duke football plays a game. They're on the road at Miami. So let's talk a little bit about that one after we take our final timeout here on today's show of Locked On Blue Devils. Yes, Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a holiday or a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing overtime game. We just saw one of those with Duke football, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are first in the parking lot and who are the last to leave. We see you. We really, really do. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and yes, a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate, ironing your jersey, or doing other things on your game day to-do list, it's always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help you keep fueled throughout the season. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipping nationwide. 5 Hour Energy is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Yes, Duke football at Miami. Manny Diaz, he used to coach the Hurricanes, if you didn't know that, Connor. I think we're going to hear that a good bit watching the broadcast throughout the game tomorrow.
Yeah, I'd buckle up, and I would suggest not playing a drinking game every time you hear a reference to any connections between Duke's staffers and Miami's players, or Duke's staffers to Miami as the school, or anything of that nature.
A lot of connections.
You might be blacked out by about the second quarter.
So we'll see it unfold. Miami now number 5 team in the entire country, still unbeaten. ACC favorites right now, expected to be a part of the now expanded 12-team college football playoff. In Vegas, our friends over at FanDuel don't expect this to be much of a contest. You see the number 20 floating around when we're looking at the line and how big of a separator it could be between Duke and the Hurricanes. Do you agree with that? What kind of game does this have the making of to you?
So, yes and no. I'll start with this. One of the toughest things for a coach is to try to get your team to bounce back after either an emotional win or an emotional loss. Anytime there's emotions involved, basically think of it this way. It's really hard to get your team back. So I don't know from that perspective. Like I don't know where Duke is if they're living in last weekend, and if they're still kind of toiling after that one to SMU, then it might be a really long day, and they might be coming home with a pretty big loss on their hands. Everything they've said leads you to believe that that's not the case. Everything they've said this week has made you feel like they have moved on. They've put it in the past. And if they have, then I think they could make a game of this. I always say puncher's chance, especially when it's a 20-point spread. I mean, Miami is obviously the better team and the more talented team. I'm not a believer in Mario Cristobal getting this train into Charlotte at 12-0. I don't think that they go through the rest of November without a loss. I don't know that happens this weekend. They have 2 home games left. It's the 2 teams I cover. It's Duke and Wake. And then they go to, I believe their road games are Georgia Tech and Syracuse. And I see them losing one of those games. Like I have such little faith in the guy that didn't realize he could knee out a win last year and wound up losing the game. And I have such little faith in their defense, which gives up chunk plays. Like their defense is susceptible to long plays and long plays for touchdowns. So if Duke can open things up with the passing game in the same way that they did against SMU, which also has a really good defense, then Duke can put up numbers on this team. And then it's a matter of what can Duke do to limit Cam Ward and that offense, because that is not an offense that you look at and say, yeah, we can hold them under 20. It's an offense that you look at and say, we're going to hold on for dear life and hope we make them settle for field goals in the red zone, and hopefully they're under 30 by the end of the game. And they've they scored their lowest point total of the season last week, and that was a 36-14 win over Florida State. So it's no small task to say
Right.
Duke has to make Miami play its worst offensive game.
Right.
And then Duke offensively probably has to have one of the better games that Miami's defense has allowed. It's a lot, but it's not impossible. Like, you're not going into this game. Like, look, I covered Clemson I covered games against Clemson in 2015, 2016, 2018. This Miami team is not that. Like, they're not NFL players across the defensive line. They're not surefire
first round pick quarterbacks. Yeah,
quarterback.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So they're not the typical juggernaut that we're used to in the ACC.
Should be a fun one. And maybe these Duke teams will play inspired for their head coach. I know Manny Diaz is one not to make this a big deal at all, but yet that's what we do. He spent 3 years there and no longer is employed at Miami, and now gets a chance in the ACC at Duke. A great job so far as their head coach to go back down there.
Yeah, so they told us that the Carolina game was just another game and that it didn't mean anything more than any other game. And then the photos come out after the game of them smoking cigars in the locker room, and it's like, oh yeah, you guys have cigars on hand for the home game against
just
UConn
any other game,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the ones where they say it, and it's like, okay, well, if it actually plays out that way, let's see if that was actually the case.
Right. Yep. And so we'll see what happens with Duke and Miami. Conor, thanks for the time as always, man. Tell us about Duke.rivals.com. Tell us about Devils Illustrated.
Yeah, Devils Illustrated, Duke.rivals.com. Hope you check it out. It's going to be a busy month, starting basically right now and carrying it through. And by the way, December is even more busy with the way the football calendar works out. So swing on by and check it out. It'll be worth your time and worth the subscription price. Thanks
for stopping by, Conor. We'll do it again soon, okay? All right.
Thanks, JJ.
That's Conor O'Neill joining us here on the program. Really excited to talk with him, and I'm excited for this weekend for both Duke basketball and football. Hopefully they're able to get a big win over the Hurricanes. We're back at it on Monday. We're starting the college basketball season. That's awesome to say. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you on Monday. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.